For some answers, we're going to bring up our next panel, the workforce of the future. Our moderator is Svenja Falk from Accenture. Welcome to the stage. And our panelists are Jens Breyer and Volker Wolf. Please join us on the stage for your panel. We have a video as well, which we'll play first.
A very, very warm welcome. This is the most relevant podium on the whole conference. And do you know why? Because we will talk about the future of work, of our own future, the future of our children, the future of our companies, and we will look at questions how startups can contribute. Has any one of you ever tried to apply with the US Army? No? If you want to apply with the US Army, the first person you will talk to is Sergeant Star. Sergeant Star is a chatbot on the website of the US Army. And Sergeant Star is incredibly intelligent. So I went to this page and asked, can I apply as a German? And Sergeant Star said to me, well, most of our jobs are reserved for US citizens, but you may apply for a green card. Please contact ABC. Or, if you don't want to do that, marry an American. So, Sergeant Star is very intelligent. Is Sergeant Star the call center agent, the person we will all interact with when we apply for a passport, when we apply for a job, when we interact in a company? So how will our future look like? It's a great honor and pleasure for me to introduce three gentlemen that look into the future on a daily basis. First, on my right, we have Jens Breyer from Carl Zeiss AG, and Carl Zeiss AG has integrated machines and learning, so you cannot distinguish this anymore. Welcome, Jens Breyer. Then we have
I'm not a chatbot, so.
Then we have Volker Wolf. Volker Wolf from the University of Siegen was the first professor who set up a human-computer interaction degree in Germany and has sort of launched the way for also academically address the topics that we want to discuss today. And then Daniel Böse from Festo is reinventing how we are working and learning on the shop floor, and already does that very successfully in Baden-Württemberg, right? So, fantastic podium, great gentlemen, three men that look into the future. So, I would like today, there were two things that I would like to get out of this discussion. First, we will discuss a little bit about what is changing. Is it really that Sergeant Star is your employee of the future? Or is there maybe an opportunity to partner with the machine? So to start with you, Daniel, what are the main changes that you're seeing in the workplace, and what do companies need to do in order to address that?
that is a broad question. Well, obviously well, first of all, maybe I would start with, it is a fantastic time currently. There is a general mood everywhere where a lot of people are looking into the future these days. Not only we on the stage now, but if you talk to people, everybody's looking industry forward, digitization, and okay, now it's back. Many other things that are changing. Now you're asking, so what is it really changing? So I can try to give an answer, not capturing it all, I guess. One thing that is happening is there is a lot of new technology coming, so the speed is ever increasing, and it's of course very difficult to cope with all these changes that are coming. And secondly, it's the speed with which changes are coming. That is a major challenge to many big corporations. We just had a corporation discussion before. And finally, it's the need for change in larger companies. Business models are changing, at least to some degree, or might be changing. Not certainly are, but might be changing, which opens up opportunities for startups, of course, but also opportunities and threats then also for larger corporations. And well, at high speed, with lots of new technology, that is a fantastic platform for all of us to bring something forward.
So the question is not what, but when.
Well, when is already.
Okay. So, Jens, so what do you need to do in order to take employees along? How do you get your workforce ready for the digital future?
Well, the question implies that the future is ahead, which is not true. I mean, we are directly living in that. So number one is what we need to do is basically we need to start a journey. I mean, it is a journey of which we know that we need a certain level of capacities or skills, as we said. However, we need to change also as a company, basically, in order to integrate those new skills. I mean, on the one hand, from a strategy perspective, of course, every company would like to have digital natives at its best. But on the other hand, we face the challenge that we have a workforce which has been, to some extent, for 20 years in the company or more. So we need to bridge both sides, and that's the biggest challenge from a classic corporate perspective. And I think we will touch base on that in our discussion later on, how we try to integrate that. So the greatest way of doing that is basically giving people access to learning. And that's the reason why, in former times, in our company, learning was, of course, seen somewhat important. Not somewhat, it was important, but it was more seen under a technical perspective. These days, actually, learning becomes a central way of transforming the company. So that's really, it may be easy for you, as you come from other environments. For us, it's a major change. And giving access to education freely, that brings a lot of transformation, it brings a lot of challenges. And on the other hand, it also means basically that we need to accept, different ways of learning. That also may be easy from a digital native perspective. On the other hand, for a traditional corporate, that takes a while and it takes some challenges. So that's for starters, so to say.
You were saying that learning is a way to transform the company, and we've just heard that there's a need to transform the company. So how do you do that?
Number one is basically we are currently digitizing all our learning offerings globally, and digitizing doesn't necessarily mean that we convert every face-to-face training into a digital training. However, we make the offering digital. We are starting up designing individual learning paths for all employees potentially. And number three is basically, and that's a step ahead, as Svenja was already mentioning. It's also our job to look into the future a little bit. I'm convinced that learning platforms, like learning management systems, which you may know or not know, but these are the backbones of learning today. But I'm convinced actually that learning will be integrated in machines. It will be directly at the workplace where you need it. Today, it's still a kind of separate activity. You have a need. You go to your computer, you take an e-learning, or you go to a class, whatever. But it disrupts you. You need to go away from your workplace, and that's not where you need the information. I'm convinced that in a not too distant future, actually, these things will be integrated.
So, Volker, Jens just said that learning will be integrated in the machines. You work a lot with small and medium enterprise in the area where you live and research. So, what is needed in order to make that work, this intersection between the machine and the human?
Well, I think digitalization is a very complex phenomenon, and I think this wave of discussion which we have right now, also around the term of Industry 4.0 and all the things, is very helpful on the one side because it puts attention to the need to develop organizations and to see how they fit into future markets and things like that. On the other side, it puts maybe a little bit too much emphasis on the technical side of the development so I'm, as Svenja mentioned, I'm from a region called Siegerland, which is somewhere in the center of former West Germany. It's a rather sort of rural area, but it has a high density of still producing companies. It's an old steel industry place, so it's heavy industry, it's car supply chain, but also smart home technology, things like that. And we see the industrial base is rather small and medium size. Family companies who are in the market since really long time, and for them it's really difficult. We see very low level of digitalization on the one hand, but we also see a very established way of doing business and a little bit of lacking openness to the changing in the competition in the world. You know, I mean, they're very proud of producing really the best things you can buy in the world, and they really do. They are, we call them, some of them call themselves hidden champions, and they are. But the world is even changing for hidden champions, and they need to see that customers around the world are maybe not willing to pay double the price for a Siegerland technology compared to an Indian or Chinese, and so they really need to go into strong transformation processes, and we don't see that everywhere. And so I think the label of digitalization and also Industry 4.0 could be a good way of making the industrial base of Germany more agile, more questioning, more into development mode.
So coming back to the question of learning and skilling, on the one hand, you stated there's a sort of resistance, if you will, to embrace sort of the opportunities and also the competitive environment by those companies, which are, by the way, 99% of all companies are German companies, are small and medium enterprise. So they are not embracing it, and then secondly, the topic of our talk today, sort of digitalizing the workforce, making the workforce ready for the future. So two challenges. So where do you start, Volker?
Well, we are academics, and we are asked, and we are what the Germans call Wirtschaftsinformatik, so information systems people. So we are typically asked to come in if they see problems with their with their IT infrastructure, things like that. But often the problems which we see, they are more profound, and so we try to what we call an integrated organization and technology development process. So when we are asked to help them to get new technologies, to develop qualification and organizational structures and practices by introducing technologies.
I would like to add something. That's something when you were just giving your explanations, I heard a good differentiation from a friend a couple of days ago. He said, you know, we need to make sure that we really understand what digitization means. And there is the first step is basically, you know, doing things digitally. And the second thing is, you know, reinventing or really digitizing. And there's important difference. At the moment, lots of companies, I'm not excluding ourselves actually, are still in the stage of, you know, doing things digitally. You know, things which have been done manually, you know, the digitization part, you know, really inventing new business models is a second step. obviously it is related to the first one. You can't do the second one without the first one, so it's necessary that we start doing things digitally, but we need to look beyond that.
So there are obviously a couple of sort of means or measures to digitalize. So there is, you can work with a startup, you can buy them, you can hire someone from Google. So there are many things that one can do to sort of reinvent or digitize the company. How do you do that at Festo?
Many things are at the end possible. First of all, I'm a little bit skeptical, as I say, a Swabian mid-sized company, that he would fly in some Silicon Valley guy who would teach us how to do it. Well, I'm pretty sure we would teach him that this is not the way. So this will be the direction of the organization. They are proud scientists, engineers, employees. Well, as you said, they're very proud of what they do, and they do it good. They do it well. So if you just tell them that they're all stupid and there's the shiny guy, that doesn't work. I also maybe slightly disagree with the formulation you had before that they don't want. I think a lot of people actually want to change. It's the question of the state of mind, of the frameworks you have, and whether you put people in the position to actually go for a new path and go for a different way to do it. Typically, you have roadmaps. The next product needs to be 10% cheaper, faster, whatever. So people are used to do this, and they're not only used, they're also asked to do it. But if you put them in a different state of mind, as not 10%, but 90% cheaper or something, well, you need to think radically different and need to break free. And that you can do, of course, internally and internal incubators and the like. Or, I think in many cases, you need to realize you will not succeed to do it by yourself. You will need startups often, or other companies that you need to cooperate with, or partner, or buy, or whatever, or maybe even acquire the companies at some certain stage. But I think the important realization you have to do for yourself is you won't master it by yourself.
So this morning on another podium, we had the interesting comment that sort of inside-out innovation will transform into outside-in by sort of collaborating with the ecosystem. What if you look at sort of employee roles? And so what does that mean? If I, sort of as an Accenture employee, sort of spend 75% of my time not interacting with my colleagues, but interacting with people that are outside my company, and also doing lots of that virtually. So what does that mean for sort of work in a company in the future? What do you think?
First of all, I think it's not from inside out to outside in, but it's using outside in to boost inside out.
Okay, the third way.
Yeah. Well, because I don't want others to do the innovation that I want to capitalize on. I think we need to do it we need to do our own work at the end. But you're asking, how is that going to change? Well, I think when you bring in people that come from different companies, so from different cultures, might be a startup, might be a large corporation, you always see that something is happening in the teams that they're starting to be integrated. Well, on the one side, there's friction. What is that strange guy or girl doing? Why does he believe or she believe this is all better, how they used to do it, I know, at Zeiss or at Daimler or wherever, or as a startup. But I think that they come with a different mindset, and they used to do things differently. Also, as a startup, you used to do things just in a different way. And that transforms teams, brings new ideas, and starts to move things. But at the end, I think only to a certain degree, because the overall frame at some point is you can't stretch endlessly.
So what do you think at Zeiss about this?
Well, I can only agree with what just Volker just said, and we do two more. Well, probably you do them as well, but we also, count on what we call internal rotation, because I mean, taking people out of their own comfort zone is to some extent harsh. On the other hand, it really drives innovation. I mean, in 10 years ago, that was in a classic company that was seen as something unstable. If someone worked in finance, then moved to supply chain, and then now is working in digitization. That's by the way, my own vita. That's my own way. That's something I heard oftentimes. That's unstable. These days, it's actually what we need to combine things with things you wouldn't combine in a traditional way. And this is really what we count on, internal rotation. This is something which we will foster and which we will drive. That's the one thing. The other thing is, we need an ecosystem of startups around us, because on the one hand, as also Volker said, we are also a proud company. And I heard the sentence, that's not the way how things are done here. On the other hand, we need to do it differently. So this is what we do is we go for cooperations, we go for partnerships on specific projects, and that's mutually beneficial for both sides. It's for us, it gives us a way actually to look at things differently. We may not believe them at first. We heard in the former panel, never accept a no. That's true. So it may be probably taking, well, I don't know, 2 or 3 times to do that. On the other hand, that's a learning process triggered within the company. The second part is it also helps the startups, from my perspective, at least, or from our perspective, because as a traditional industrial company, you have
not that many semiconductor people left in Germany. But if you would ask any semiconductor engineer, what is more difficult, digital or analog design? Just to provoke a little bit, just a little bit of coding, everybody. There's nobody left that can do that. And I think we need a lot of respect for, I just call it the analog now, for all the knowledge that is there. And that will be highly in demand in the future, to know that and be able to combine it with the digital work and create innovation out of that.
So from your perspective, this sort of idea or discussion about the end of the product-centric world, and that that in Germany the whole industrial base
that. Let me make an example. When you go to any manufacturing place, any factory here, plenty of them here in the region, and just look at the machines. You would find a machine. We have this light tower on it, and it's blinking in red. I guess you all know what this means. Problem. Is anything happening? Often, no. And I can tell you, well, that is small data. And even with small data, nothing is happening. So even now, if I would have big data, well, if I don't make use of that very clear indication that I need to do something, and this is the reality, well, what does big data help me? Well, if big data tells me that there will be a problem in 1 hour, care of, well, great. Yeah. And of course, there are interesting models with big data. Bring across big data doesn't help you if there is no impact at the end. And that is the really important thing, and actually that ties back to qualification education. If you don't make sure that people understand to make something out of it that they don't know, then nothing is happening, and well, it's all words and no impact, and people will stop it soon after.
You're making a very interesting point. If you talk about the topic of digital literacy, digital education, we do not yet really know what we need to learn and what we need to know in this regard. And probably to translate it from Germany, it's just a pig hunted through the village, that now we feel that the coding or the mint will sort of take sort of the competitiveness of Germany to the next level. Nevertheless, I mean, looking at what you are doing at your company, and you've told me many examples on how you sort of integrate little nano degrees into your very sort of sophisticated or complex machines. And I just imagine myself having this machine in front of me and then trying to do something with it. So I need to learn something, and I think your clients, for whom you are doing these, they need to learn something. So on the one hand, yes, the products will remain, but there is this merger of sort of digital enabled learning and skilling, and a very sophisticated product which changes the way we are interacting, we are learning, or isn't it?
Well, the first thing is, I'm not too sure if this is really sophisticated. The point I'm driving at is the following. And the less sophisticated it appears to be, the better it is for the user, and the easier it is for him or her to accept, and it'll help. At this point in time, of course, we don't really know what we need to know. That's for sure. On the other hand, I think we need to step back a little bit, from racing against machines. These machines will be more intelligent. They will probably do my work tomorrow. Maybe. I came across a sentence a couple of days ago which said, every work, every task which should be done by a machine should be done by a machine. So probably and that's the other question. Probably we did a lot of tasks which should have been done by machines. So what I'm driving at is we need to accept that machines will do a lot of things which we were used doing, but then on the other hand, we need to skill up to do additional things, and that's also for a company, a traditional industrial company, a big challenge. Everyone, having been there for 5 years, 10 years, whatever. I think it's the same at Festo. There is a certain way of doing things. And taking people out of that basically is really the challenge. So what we start doing is, instead of having large projects, having really super mega projects, we slice them down in smaller things, more digestible pieces, in order to drive smaller changes. And by that, actually, people have their own learnings which they capture, and then they get used to smaller steps instead of the quantum leap.
Yeah, I just want to comment a bit on what you said. I think, of course, certain things can be automized, and that was always the case. But I think for the rest of the things, we really need a different design philosophy when we build systems. It's rather to support qualified work. Because and that means also to buy the IT systems differently. Long time, and I've sort of computer science background, so long time the holy grail of computing was to automize. And when designing complex algorithm, it was never thought about how to keep the user in the loop. Because the concept was full automatization, and I think to make to find interesting ensembles between man and machine, we need to think differently, and so I think looking at the vision of supporting capable, qualified workers must be the right way to do it in Germany. Of course, there are certain things we can automate, and we should do that. But also with automatization, we need to solve one problem more on a societal level than on the company level. Is what do we do with the gains in productivity? We need to find sensible ways of dealing with it beyond just polarizing society into the ones who work even more and those who don't work anymore. So it's somehow an innovation climate is also somehow related to settle these problems on a more societal level.
So you would agree that probably long term there will be a further spread initiated by technology, people that sort of tasks that get automated. The famous paper from Osborne Fry thought it would be 47% of all jobs. And then there would be ideas like, you know, the basic income that, by the way, Finland is currently experimenting with. That would be things
I'll answer publicly.
that would be things that you would see on the horizon.
No, I mean, there are economists, these people who say that all the jobs going to disappear. They don't understand very much what happens in the factories. They have their models, their mathematical models, and a very broad understanding of what technology. They believe also what the visionaries of computing have always told the world, but these visions of full automatization work slowly and not so well. So I quite strongly doubt that the expectations of how many jobs can disappear will really become true. Plus, the companies are moving, and the jobs and the qualifications are moving too. And so, in this move, we will need to find a new adjustment between what can be done by computers and what can be done by people. It needs to be done by people, because if everything could be automated, then there is no reason why companies should be produced in Germany, because the robots can stand as well in South Korea as in the UK or anywhere else. So the chance for our place is to find intelligent ways of combining people and and algorithms.
I don't know.
Like-
This is exactly what you tried to do in FESTO, right?
Well, I'd like to actually
Yeah.
pick up this thought that Volker mentioned before. On actually, I think it's simplification of the user interface, that you say take people along to understand what is really happening. And I'd like to pick it up because I think it's actually a great opportunity for many startups. At the end, it's on the one side, this is what Apple has done to make something very simple. Actually, now it is not that simple anymore, but it used to be. But you can see that at many, especially industrial companies, they thrive on adding yet another feature, yet another thing that is the greatest thing on earth that maybe 1% of their customer needs. And so the systems have become utterly complex, very difficult to use. And I'm coming from the automation world. I can tell you, yeah, it's big opportunity for companies that are not aiming at the world market, but say, well, I don't need to cover this all. I have a very simple solution because I'm a small company that is sufficient for me, and I bet there will be very many customers that would be highly interested in doing this thing. So there are opportunities across the world. But of course, you provoked me with your statement. Then we could also put the robots outside Germany. I don't think so. There is, I think, when you design or develop a product, it's a huge advantage of having the production just next door. Of course, we all dream that you have a fully digital twin of your production facility, and you can design it all on the computer, and then you click, and then it will be produced somewhere else. I don't think this will happen anytime soon. And from my point of view, Germany probably has the best infrastructure in terms of manufacturing and all the system integrators and smaller machine builders, all that you need to get an ecosystem like that running, to automate on a very high level. Well, Japan would be the other place, but these two places is where this really can happen.
Maybe you can elaborate a little bit on the opportunities. I mean, this is a startup fair, so maybe you can elaborate a bit. So where do you see areas where obviously startup activity or maybe also R&D, Volker, from you, could make a difference to what you are seeing in your companies and in other companies that you work with?
Well, as a startup, I think I would look at the interfaces from, say, larger or mid-sized companies to their customers or suppliers. Because especially what German companies tend to do is if they think about innovation, or they think about their product. And this is where they're exceptionally good, very difficult to beat. What they don't think so much about is how do they actually interact with their customers or their suppliers, and how could this be done completely differently and much, much better.
So is that the ecosystem building
Yeah.
at the interface?
Yeah, and the processes that are behind. And, well, most of those companies, of course, have a lot of IT. Oh, but it's ugly. This is full of legacy systems that are very different. I mean, most of us use SAP, of course, yeah, and we all know how difficult it is to change something. No, but that is the speed at which you can change. If you try to run faster than your IT can change, oh, you won't. Oh no, that is a huge opportunity.
So what do you see from an R&D perspective, and also what you're seeing in your research? What can all these aspirational young men and women do in the future? What do you think?
I think in Central Europe we need a little bit of a different innovation model than in Silicon Valley, and so I personally very much like to go to Silicon Valley, and I'm really impressed by the cluster of really bright people there and visionaries and things like that. But it doesn't make any sense for Europe or for big parts of Europe to just try to copy that. As some of you said, I think the core of Germany is around, you called it analog production. And I wouldn't make this dichotomy between analog and digital, because what we need in the future is bringing it together, and that's a place for us. And I think young companies here, they need to rather quickly need to understand how traditional ones work, and where their market space and their service provision place could be in innovating them and in bringing new ideas there. But for that, they also need to understand the work practices in these companies, but also in the customer companies of these companies. And this is something which academia traditionally is not too good to teach. And I think universities have a certain challenge also to find appropriate ways to get the students come in touch with practitioners, understanding and innovating with them.
What do you mean by work practices? Can you elaborate a little bit on that?
Well, I mean, I can make an example from the German Wirtschaftsinformatik community. We've long time very much loved process diagrams, because we believed that you can understand an industry or a company if you draw lots of process diagrams. But this is obviously it's a very valid method, but only one. You really need to deeply understand how people work. You need to understand their cultures. You need to understand what motivates them. You need to really fine-gritly understand what's going on. That's what I mean by work practices. And you can only innovate, from my point of view, after having understood what's there. And that's also the way we do IT design very much, grounded in a profound understanding of current existing practices to move them.
So Jens, what are your recommendations to young entrepreneurs?
I like the point very much that startups actually should help, or you should go to the interface between the existing company and the customers. That's one thing. I also think, because that's really where German companies tend to be a little bit complicated. The other part which I see is also, helping to scale up like educational solutions for companies, for traditional companies, because this is really a need. We see a large need of digitizing or even developing digital models of learning, for instance, within a company. So learning is I know it's a hard spot, but nevertheless that's a market of the future. I wouldn't look for the holy grail there, but I would rather look for smaller innovations that really help to drive home a simple message. Simple learning, simple methods actually to get home messages. The third thing I would say is basically also to help large industrial companies to use their data in a way they would never think of. Basically combining additional data this is a kind of traditional data with, outside data. This is something which rarely happens or is difficult to happen. So basically just trying to do the unexpected. That would be the third area, I'd say.
Thank you very much. So we have 2 minutes left, and we have learned that Sergeant Starr isn't our master in the future. He might be our colleague or a slave. So I would like to ask all of you with a short statement at the end. So what is the future of work in your perspective?
Are you looking at me first? Yeah. Well, not that much different from today, if you do it right today.
Volker.
I just wanted to say something about the future of learning. I think we need to understand learning much more collectively. I think, and that's also a fault of, I think, computing with the computer support where they do this content management systems. That was all, about content, but it wasn't about really applying it in practice and making people come together and exchange ideas and learn together. I think the strongest way to learn if you can get people together who have a similar vision, who like each other, and who want to expand their capabilities and opportunities. And I think in universities we also have to overcome our old way of understanding lecture rooms where there is one guy who knows something and he talks to the others who maybe listen to him or not. And that's a really that's one way and a valid way somehow, but we need to broadly extend these didactic concepts and work with companies, with startups and established companies, offer learning opportunities in practice to our students.
I think we should say more often, I like the future.
I think that's a very, very nice last statement. Thank you, everyone, for your interest into this session. I hope that you have seen some opportunities, ideas, inspirations for you in the future. And I would like to thank my futuristic panel for a great discussion. Thank you very much.